Good afternoon, everybody, and I'd like to introduce you to Terra Uranium. We're a new company. We only listed on the ASX on the 8th of September this year, and we're already up and running with an extensive exploration program in the Athabasca. That's in Canada. I'll give you a little bit of background, not only in our company, but also on the nuclear market and how things are going. I guess we should start with a little disclaimer. Everybody should read these and follow them away. Next slide, please. Yep, right, you've all read that. Great, we'll go on to the next one. A little bit on the nuclear industry for those who aren't familiar with it. There's been an enormous change. Myself and my team have been in uranium companies for over 10 years now, and we've seen an enormous change. And I guess it's that people are realizing that if you need baseload power, you need nuclear as some component of the system. And there's been a recognition now by governments all around the world that this is the case, particularly Europe and North America. And we're positioned in North America. Next slide, please. This we borrowed this from Visual Capitalist, and I particularly like this slide because it gives you basically the history of the nuclear industry right back to the 1950s. And the bottom chart there shows you the way that it's changed or grown with time. And we had a major inflection point around 1990, which was the collapse of the previous Soviet Union. And above that, you've got a cross-section of the Athabasca Basin showing the discovery history. And two of the largest deposits, which are Cigar Lake and MacArthur, which are a little bit deeper, were both found in that period around the 1980s into 1990. And really since then, most of the discoveries have been very small, or they've been outside the basin itself, such as the recent Arrow deposit of NextGen. We see that also the major producers in the world has changed. Australia continues to be a major producer through South Australia, but that's as a byproduct. And then we have Canada and Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, of course, is not part of Russia these days, but is heavily impacted by the sanctions as a lot of their services and exports go through Russia. So they're heavily impacted. So that's a little bit of background on the industry. If we go to the next slide, we'll have a look at what we're doing. So we're focused on, as a company, Terra is focused on looking for these very large deposits a little bit deeper in the basin. How we do that is it's people. It's always people. You've got to have the best people. Funding, we're just listed. We've got the funds for that. Finding the right targets and the tools. And I'll run you through a little bit of how we look under deep cover for major uranium deposits. That little bar chart at the top emphasizes in red there, it's drilling. At some point, you do have to drill these things. That's when you make a discovery. That's when you get a major uplift in value. If we just look at the next slide, that'll show us a little bit of a 101 on uranium deposits in the Athabasca. What really stands out there is that these are the richest deposits in the world by order of magnitude. They're extremely high grades. Deposits like MacArthur and Cigar, the core deposits are measured in percents, and not just 1 or 2. We're talking 10 or 20 or 30% uranium. That's just absolutely unheard of. There's an unusual geology here. We have a major thick sandstone unit sitting over a basement, an Archean basement, and major faults where the mineralization is moving. And we have a redox reaction right at that boundary between the sandstone and the basement, often catalyzed by carbon, a carbonaceous material in the basement faults. But you can see those little red deposits there right at the unconformity. They're the ones we're looking for. Right, if I just go on to the next slide, that'll show us what we've got. So all the major past deposits are sitting on the right-hand side there, running down just on the outside of inside the basin and just outside it. We identified the Cable Bay Shear Zone, which has been known about since the 60s and 70s, if you remember that earlier slide. This is a major structural zone with known uranium, but there hasn't been a lot of exploration done there since that change in the 1990s because it was considered a little bit too deep. We're looking at depths there of 250, our shallowest at Hawkrock, but most of them are around the 800-900 metre mark. I guess the big change that's happened there is that we are now moving to solution mining, which is where we actually extract the uranium by dissolving it, similar to the shallower ISR deposits. That means that if we find a deposit under deeper cover, we definitely can extract it. We searched through the database. Our CEO Canada, Mike McClelland, has worked in this area for the last 10 years. He knows every deposit, and we focused straight in on these areas. We have almost 1,000 square kilometres of tenements in our own name. We're not in joint ventures. These are not earn-ins. These are 100% owned by Terra, and we don't have any royalties or off-takes. We find something here, it's ours 100%. I'll quickly run through our major targets. If we go on to the next one, I'll give you a quick run through what we've done. So we're only listed in September, so we're in just early December. It's only been 3 months, but this is a very professional team. We've hit the ground running hard. First, we've flown geophysics, ZTEM, which is a deep-seeking electrical method. That little picture there in the center shows you the preliminary results from the ZTEM across our properties. We are getting extremely strong conductors in the basement, so we know there's something down there. We're not quite sure what it is yet, but there's definitely conductors there. We've also done a trial of a process called ANT from Geospace in Adelaide in Australia. This is a type of passive seismic. We've just had the preliminary results back. I can't present them here, but they are also very strong. So that's for mapping the basement and helping target us on the right spots. The logistics camp is being permitted, should come through next week. We've had verbal approval. We're just waiting for the paperwork, and the dozers will be building the ice roads. They commence this week, and we'll be ready to get into that program early in the new year. And the tenders for the drilling have already been called. One of the big issues you'll find in areas like this is a very hot exploration area, is getting people and equipment and drill rigs. Very, very hard to get. But of course, with our connections and our board that I'll go through at the end, we're able to achieve that. I'll just run through the projects one by one. Next slide, please. The most southern project is Parker. This was the least known about, but the most intriguing. We had an old megatem anomaly here, which is a very old 1960s airborne electrical method with a big anomaly on it. We've got a Rano immediately to the south of us with some old drill holes with significant uranium numbers in them. And the ZTEM, which we've just flown on the right, is showing that we do have a major conductor there. And we also have some surface signs of uranium in a boulder trail. Very interesting area. It's probably coming up our priority list quite quickly. The second target area is right in the center and is the largest. Next slide, please. This is Passfield Lake. This is the one we started on. We have basically 2 areas to the east and the west. The little image on the top left is the one we had in our prospectus. So within the last 3 months, we've done the ZTEM on the top right, and we've also done some VTEM, showing some very strong conductors there. Again, we're seeing signs of uranium at surface, very low, but it's there, and we'll certainly be getting into this area. This is the largest, and we also have targets east and west of the lake in this one, and also in the north. And the third target area is right at the northern end of our properties and is the shallowest. This is called Hawkrock. This is a very intriguing one because we have a very strong dispersion trail. This whole area, the whole Athabasca, has been heavily glaciated. It's very cold there at the moment. It's currently -20. It gets down to -40 in the winter. The glaciers do take the tops off these deposits, and we can get radiometric dispersion trails. This is the shallowest, but also has never been flown with geophysics. So we're quite excited to have a look at this one. It'll be the easiest for us to test. Next slide, please. And as I said right at the start, it's all about people. We have assembled an amazing team. These are the guys who put the company together. So from myself, there's Dr. Darryl Clark, ex-Cameco, ex-BHP. Troy Vasoli, very experienced in both mine production and exploration, formerly with NextGen, was developing their major project. Doug Engdale, one of the major contractors in the basis, but also a strong experience in production geology, and Dr. Kylie Prendergast, an extremely successful explorer. We're all geologists, all with a very good track record of discovery. But we should also point out our management team. These are the guys on the ground in Canada. Next slide, please. Headed by Mike McClelland. He's the last 10 years with Cameco, heading up all their exploration in this part of the basin. Nova Taylor and Jules, finance people who, along with me, look after the company. Jennifer Burgess, extremely experienced exploration manager, particularly in very low or subarctic areas. She worked on Rio Tinto's Diavik Diamond project and was partly responsible for that discovery. Kyle Patterson is a geophysicist and Tom is a geochemist. All these guys are in-house. We have our own in-house team who are on the ground. Next slide. And just to finish off, we realise our responsibilities. ESG is very important to us. We have engaged already and are continuing to engage with the First Nations people in Canada, and they are strongly supportive of what we're doing. If you don't have a license to operate on the ground, you won't be successful. Thank you very much, everybody. And if there are any questions, we can take them, David.
Thanks, Andrew. Great presentation. Certainly hit the ground running since listing only a few months ago. There's some questions come through, a bit of intrigue, I suppose, or not intrigue, but how do you actually assemble a team as strong as this and assets as prospective of this at a time when, you know, it's pretty hard to find good projects, but you've clearly done a good job of that, but also assembled a team that's capable of delivering those projects?
Yeah, good question, David. I guess it comes down to people, as it always does. I was approached by Darryl Clark, who's been a friend of mine for 30 years. He's in Canada. He's an Australian, but he lives in Canada. He said he had this great idea to form a company. So he and I got together, and I immediately said to him, well, I need a guy on the ground in Canada who lives and breathes these things and knows them back to front. That's where Mike came from. Troy and Doug have worked together in the mines, in the uranium mines, knew each other very well. They came in onto the team. And then Kylie's worked with me for the last 10 or 12 years in several of the companies that I've formed. And she's ex-Rio and is a superb explorationist. So it's people, David, pretty much. And then I should put a big shout out to Niv Dagan and the guys at Peak Asset Management, because they put the company together. They ran the IPO for us, absolute brilliant process. And Automic, I guess, who are running all the back room for us. They're doing the CFO and company secretary.
And once you had the team together, did it make it easy then to find the ground?
To some extent, yes, because Mike and the team knew that they had projects that they'd been busting to have a go at for a very long time. And as we said, they were a little bit deeper in the basin, so people had assumed that they were not mineable. But with the changes in technology, particularly what Denison are doing at Wheeler River, they've now done their first full-scale trial mining of solution mining at a depth of 600 meters below surface. And as you can imagine, uranium, if you've got 30% uranium, and uranium is very soluble, so you can dissolve it, you leave a big void, and it basically self-mines itself. So this is an absolute game changer for looking undercover.
And like you say, the technology advancement has really opened up the opportunities, and here's a classic example of one.
Yeah, I think so. And if you look at analogies in gold, I've spent a lot of time in WA. You know, everybody was looking around Kalgoorlie, and then they went out and found Tropicana on a completely different trend, or they've found the stuff in the Perth Basin, which, you know, nobody was really looking at. It's these parallel trends where you sort of make a little bit of a jump, and then everybody's very wise in hindsight. But when we started assembling this about a year ago, this ground was still available. It's not available now. We completely pegged all around. We've got ISO on one side. We've got Denison. We've got Orano, the French. They're all around us.
And in terms of the next 6 to 12 months, what does the activity flow look like?
It's very, very busy. So we're in the field now. We're building the roads. We'll be putting as much of our budget into the ground, David. We have very low overheads. We put our money into drill holes, geophysics, and geochem to make a discovery. So we're flat out now from now right through until August, September.
Quality team. You've clearly assembled a more than interesting ground package, focused on drilling and exploration, which investors love because it creates news flow and keeps the eyeballs on the stock. So, Andrew, congratulations to everything you and the team have achieved, and we look forward to following the company with interest.
Thank you very much, David. Pleasure.